Story number 1. The feeling of being watched. When I was younger, my friends and I used to spend our weekends scanning the surface of the dark web. We were pretty good with computers back then. We never really did anything or clicked on any links at the time. We mostly just looked around for fun. Fast forward a couple of years and I've been in Japan completing a work study. My friends and I graduated high school and we kind of went our separate ways. After moving overseas, I never thought I'd see any of them again. It was around 2 years ago when I went out shopping for a dress for a party and I ran into one of my old friends. For the sake of this story, I'll just call him Dan. Dan and I were pretty close in high school. In fact, it was him who suggested the Japan work study to me back before we graduated. We hung out for the day and did some catching up. It wasn't long until Dan started talking about the dark web. He stated how he still uses it and that he's been getting more adventurous lately. I told him I hadn't used it since graduating. I don't know how, but he managed to convince me to give it another try. I wasn't interested at first. Dan was really good at talking you into doing things. It was how he got me to fly all the way to Japan and how he convinced all of us to start browsing the dark web when we were in high school. When I got home that night, I turned my laptop on and downloaded all the necessary things I needed in order to safely browse the dark web. I started out as usual, just by browsing through. I didn't click on any links at first, but it wasn't as satisfying as when I was a kid. I guess it was a lot easier to feel entertained back then. Now that I was older, just browsing seemed a little boring. I decided to click on a link that seemed pretty harmless. The link sent me to a site where people were selling drugs. I had no desire to buy any of them, but it did give me a rush when I actually clicked on the link. It was at this point I noticed my webcam light flash on. I let out a gasp and put my laptop down. I hadn't pressed anything that would have turned it on. I kept my cool and simply turned it off before I continued browsing. Not a moment later, it turned on again. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I was severely freaked out at this point. I stopped what I was doing and decided to clear my laptop of everything that had anything to do with the dark web. I gave it a deep clean and shut it off. I sat there for a while, watching the webcam light. I think an hour or so went by and it hadn't turned back on, so I decided the matter was dealt with and left it. I went about my night. I ate my dinner, had a shower, and got ready for bed. I was walking around in a towel, drying my hair, and I noticed that my webcam light was on again. I froze for a moment. I had turned my laptop off completely, and something had turned it back on and turned my webcam on. I rushed forward and slammed my laptop screen down. My heart was racing, and I had no idea what to do. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I picked my laptop up and stuffed it underneath the pillow on my couch. Still, I felt like I was being watched. That was when my phone that was sitting on the table beside my laptop vibrated. My hands were shaking as I leaned down and picked it up. I opened a message from an unknown number, and it was a picture of me, standing in the middle of my living room, in my towel. Every single hair on my body stood on end, and I felt sick. My eyes shot up to the window in front of me. It was dark outside, and I couldn't see anything, but I felt like there was a pair of eyes on the other side of the glass, staring directly at me. I rushed forward and pulled the curtains closed before rushing to my door and checking that it was locked. I didn't waste any time in calling the police, and they arrived quickly. I told them what had happened and they confiscated my phone and laptop. An officer stayed outside my house for the rest of the night. They were eventually able to tell me that someone had hacked into my laptop while I was on the dark web, and they were able to find out everything about me. They found my number, my address, and even my name. As you can imagine, I didn't stay in Japan. I requested to finish my work studies back in the United States and flew back home as soon as I could. That was the last time I used the dark web. Story number 2. Gun for hire. This story took place around 4 years ago, just before my city was forced into lockdown due to COVID. I was spending a lot of time stuck inside, and I got bored pretty easily. My brother and I used to spend a lot of time browsing random websites, and every now and again we'd come across a link to the dark web. We weren't that interested in any of it. However, when we stuck inside our house during lockdown, some new urge to entertain ourselves caused us to go deeper into the dark web. We found a lot of sites trying to sell all sorts of things. Everything from weapons to drugs, and even human organs were available on there. We came across this one site where you could hire a hitman. We both had a good long laugh about that. We didn't think it was real even for a second. So, like the idiots we are, we decided to give it a try. Now, you can't purchase anything on the dark web with anything as simple as a credit card. You have to purchase some sort of cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin, and then use that. We both chipped in to afford enough Bitcoin in order to hire someone. The site described him as being an intro-level hitman, so he was a lot cheaper than the other ones. It still cost us quite a bit, but we were well off and we decided it was worth it for the entertainment. We came up with some crazy fake name for our target. We didn't think it was real, but we didn't want to risk putting anyone real in danger. So, all the details we gave them were faked in some way. The address of the target was from some fantasy book my brother read once. We were busy laughing our butts off and having the time of our lives. I suggested we give the hitman special instructions. We told them to send us a picture of the target's dead body as proof when the job was done. We really laughed at this. The job was done and we turned off the laptop. We didn't think that it was real, but if it was, we thought it would be funny to have some wannabe hitman running around looking to kill someone who doesn't exist. Now, we made one really big mistake that day. You see, in order for them to send us a picture as proof, we decided to give them one of our numbers. Yes, I know that was probably the dumbest thing anyone could do. We were cocky at that time and too busy having the time of our lives that we didn't put much thought into it. A few days passed and we had all but forgotten about the whole thing when I received a text from an unknown number. The text read simply, "So, you think you're funny?" I didn't know what to think of it at first, so I just ignored it. I got a few more texts from the same unknown number. They each got increasingly more disturbing. They said things like, "Am I a joke to you?" And "Who do you think you're dealing with?" It wasn't until I received a more chilling text that I decided to get my brother involved. The text read, "I'm going to find you." I showed my brother the texts and he suggested that we reply. So we responded with a text asking who they were and what they wanted. We didn't get a reply. I thought about calling the police, but they probably wouldn't be able to do anything about it. It was an unknown number and he hasn't made any actual threats yet. It was getting late, so I turned my phone off and we forgot about it for the night. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, something woke me up. There was a loud banging sound outside, like car doors being slammed shut. I sat up in my bed for a while, and I saw my phone screen turn on out of the corner of my eye. I looked to see that the same unknown number was calling me. I hesitated for a moment, but I answered. I tried to hide my fear, but my voice was shaky as I spoke into the speaker. At first, I heard nothing coming through the other side. I listened closer and heard heavy breathing. I spoke again. This time my voice was more firm and angry. I asked who it was and what they wanted. There was a few moments of the same heavy breathing, then someone answered. They said, "I found you." They hung up and almost instantly someone knocked loudly on the front door. I leaped out of my bed and accidentally dropped my phone on the floor. I started searching for it in the dark when I heard the door to my brother's room open, followed by his footsteps heading for the front door. I raced out of my room and grabbed him halfway down the hallway. He tried to yell out, but I pressed my hand against his mouth, allowing only muffled complaints to escape. I pulled him into my bedroom and hissed at him to shut up. I closed and locked my door as quietly as I could. My brother was calling me all sorts of names, but I quickly explained the call to him and how I think the person at the door is the man that's been texting me. He began helping me search for my phone. Neither one of us wanted to turn the light on, so we were both on our knees feeling around in the dark until one of us found the phone. We called the police and told them an intruder was trying to get into our home. They stayed on the line and I explained everything as we waited for the police to arrive. Of course, when they did, there was no one there. Although we don't have any proof, my brother and I are certain that the man who'd been texting me and showed up at our house that night was the hitman we hired. How he found out where we lived is still a mystery. We haven't heard from him since then, and we're not sure what made him give up. Hopefully he decided that at least he got some money out of it, and that a couple of pranksters weren't really worth his time. We're still living in the same house, and I'm terrified that one day he'll come back. Story number 3, Mystery Box. I used to run a YouTube channel. It wasn't much. I mostly unboxed things and did short reviews. The channel didn't get much traction, and it's shut down now, but I thought I should share the story of why I decided to shut it down. Only a few months after starting up the channel, I received an interesting comment on one of my videos. I usually got asked additional questions about the product I was unboxing, but this comment was different. They requested that I did a mystery box video and attached a link to a site that sold them. Now, I knew straight away that this link would take me to a dark web site, but that didn't really bother me. It was the first request I had gotten. Honestly, I was excited, and I thought this meant that my channel was growing. I visited the site and bought myself a box. I didn't really know what to expect, so I just went with the cheapest option. I did set up my small table I was using as a studio and waited for the box to arrive. Around 2 days later, I came home to find a small box waiting on my doorstep. I couldn't wait to open it. I started recording, did my whole intro thing, and took a box knife to the duct tape sealing the box closed. I kept speaking to the camera about what I was seeing inside the box, but after a while, I just went quiet. It was a small box, around the size of a desktop, and there wasn't much in it at first glance. There was a pair of red stilettos. They were in pristine condition and looked like they cost more than my phone. I thought I had scored since they were even my size. I kept going through the box. There was a small purse, the type girls use to hold their phones, and some cash during a night out. It was black with silver glitter woven into the fabric. Very fancy and not my taste at all. Right at the bottom of the box, I found a white envelope. I thought it was probably some thank you note or something from the site, since I usually found that in things I'd purchased. I picked it up and examined it. Nothing was written on the outside, so I opened it up. I found a couple of photos that had been printed out inside. When I looked through them, my stomach dropped to the floor. They were photos of a young girl. She had blonde hair and was wearing a black dress that hugged her tightly. I noticed that she was wearing the exact same red heels I found in the box and was carrying the exact same bag. The next photo was of the same girl, but she was tied to a chair and blindfolded. I felt sick and dropped the photos back into the box. I thought that this must be some kind of a prank. Then I noticed a piece of paper sticking out from inside the envelope. I pulled it out. It was a small note that read, "Check inside the bag for an extra surprise." I was already ready to throw up at this point, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I opened up the bag. A scream escaped my mouth, and I dropped the bag to the floor. There were teeth inside of it. Bloody, human teeth. I threw up, right there and then. I thought about calling the police, but I didn't want to get into trouble, and I was still trying to convince myself that this was some kind of prank. I put everything back into the box and threw it out with the garbage. I shut down my channel after that. I don't want to think about it, but sometimes I wonder if it was a joke, or if those teeth were real, and if they belonged to that girl in the photos.